I hope it does. Because
Hi, my name is jjaeckle, and I am talking about a persuasion speech about how it is important to communicate and how to do it effectively. According to the International Listening Association website, 85% of our listening is derived from, 85% of our learning is derived from listening. Yet listeners are distracted, forgetful, and preoccupied 75% of the time. This is from Intro to Business. And I work at a job that requires multiple communication with several different departments. So I deal with this often with getting not correct information and have to deal with the errors that come from it. It is important to communication to be effective, because if it's communicated incorrectly, it can cause mistakes. And in some workplaces, that's a serious issue. It can also cause people bodily harm. Now I would like to talk about how important communication is and give some examples of incorrect form of communication and then a correct form of communication. And then there are some barriers that I'd like to talk to that cause poor communication. The definition of communication barriers is obstacles to effectively communicate, typically defined in terms of physical language, body language, cultural, perceptual, and organizational barriers. Which organizational barriers is one of the ones I want to mainly talk about, and this is also from Intro to Business. It's a book. Organizational barriers is one of the main barriers for managers to overcome. The reason why is that it causes errors because a manager communicates information but does not inform the correct people in the organization. Some businesses will put in a certain policy and procedure that will avoid this mistake. A study done by Joseph Gurney, president of Virtual Smarts, and the AACN shown that healthcare providers saw communication errors but ignored the issues. This is an article from Medscope back from 2005. And this is also a quotation from that article. Most of the physicians, 84%, and 62% of the nurses and other clinical care providers saw a number of mistakes their coworkers were making. They were taking shortcuts and they believed they were dangerous to patients. According to the study, 85% of physicians and 48% of the nurses saw some colleagues showing poor clinical judgment. And 92% of the physicians and 65% of the nurses said they work with some people who have trouble following directions the study had found. And that was also from the article from Medscope back in 2005. It can be difficult to communicate the correct information, and if it is rushed or not heard correctly by the person who needs to hear it. And I would like to demonstrate this by using my audience and part of my visual aid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the first one a statement, they will relay it to the next one, and so forth, and the last person will read the statement out loud, and then I'll say if it's the correct one that I originally started with. And now you repeat it to the next one. Just whatever you thought you heard, go ahead and just repeat it to the next one. Okay, as you can see, it didn't make it to the last person because part of the barrier process, she didn't understand all that she heard, or she heard it but thought it in a different way, so she didn't get the same statement that was from the first person. So obviously it shows you how communication can vary and how quickly it can change. And then now I'd like to talk about some skills and ways to become a better communicator. There are several types of people that can learn to help communicate in a more clear and correct fashion. These skills are required for face-to-face communication and also for written communication. communication. Managers have a strong communication skill and make less mistakes, and their departments also run more effective. The face-to-face is a lot like speech, giving a presentation. You need eye-to-eye contact. You need to use proper tone in your voice. You need to have proper facial expressions, gestures, and posture. And in a written communication, you need to make sure that it's a business format. If you're sending it in a memo, email, and then the grammar needs to be correct, and also that it gets to the correct person for the information to be communicated throughout the facility. Effective communication saves time and money, boosting performance and morale across every area of business. And this is also from Intro to Business. When communication is properly stated, there are less mistakes, and people are not dealing with the mistakes that are made by other people, so there is not as much problems with morale and being in that work environment because they don't have to deal with those issues. And I want to give an example of a poor communication and then the correct communication. And some people do have a natural ability for communicating and know how to deliver proper information, but for some of us, they are learned skills. We have to learn how to do this. And this is an example. It's just a fictional example that I made up, but it could happen in a work environment. An employee calls into their manager due to the weather and can't make it to meet with their client. So the manager calls another employee, but unfortunately this employee lives out of town and they also are on the road traveling and cannot make it in time to use access of their company computer to call this client before they show up and have to cancel their appointment. So this manager did not use the proper setting for this. What they should have done is call the employee who is already at the work facility and have them call this client and cancel their appointment for they don't show up and have to be rescheduled while they're already there. So my whole thing about communication is that everyone can learn how to use proper communication, but in a work environment is as necessary as certain job skills because of the mistakes and errors that it can make. And just remember, we are all human, but in some situations, proper communication can actually save lives. Thank you.